Texas school vouchers are being blocked at some Muslim schools. That's our first story here on the James Show. News Talk 820 93.3 FM, WBAP. I am your host, James Parker. And this is going to get real interesting. I know it doesn't sound like that sexy or awesome if you don't have kids in school already and this doesn't directly affect you. But this is going to expand quite a bit after my setup here. You're going to like this. First, let's do the setup. WFAA actually had a great report this morning. I'm going to play the 2 full minutes. They actually did both sides of the story. And after this, we're going to build on this foundation. It's going to get real interesting.
Should be closed, but it's not. What are we talking about? Families can still enroll in Texas's new school voucher program.
A deadline was pushed back a few weeks after a federal judge stepped in. Our Natalie Haddad is live for us in the newsroom this morning to kind of explain why it was extended. Good morning, Natalie.
Good morning to you. Now, a federal judge extended the Texas school voucher deadline after lawsuits over the program excluding Islamic schools were filed. The deadline to apply for Texas Education Freedom Accounts, the state school voucher program, was originally March 16th. But on March 1st, 2 weeks prior, a Houston parent sued the state over the exclusion of Islamic schools. On March 11th, just a couple days ago, 3 more parents and 3 Islamic schools filed a similar lawsuit. And so just yesterday, a federal judge extended the application deadline to March 31st. A lot of back and forth there, but stay with me. The lawsuits claim state leaders discriminated against Islamic schools by excluding them from the voucher program. With this federal order, those schools now have a chance to apply to accept voucher program students. The state can still defend the program as is in court, but for now, families have 2 more weeks to apply. Dia?
Now, Natalie, this fight has been ongoing. Can you tell us what happens next?
Yes. So the families who filed the lawsuit face an uphill battle, most likely. Texas Attorney General Ken Paxton says the acting state comptroller who oversees the voucher program can exclude schools tied to foreign terrorist organizations, including the group CARE, which Governor Abbott accuses of being terrorist linked. Earlier this year, WFAA asked the acting comptroller directly about religious schools being left out of vouchers. And Dia, you spoke to him specifically, and I want to play what he said.
Are non-Christian schools being blocked from this program?
Absolutely not.
Yeah, it was that quick. He said absolutely not, but that's exactly what we're seeing right now. So Islamic schools can now apply for voucher students, as we mentioned, but the state may still decide not to allow them to accept voucher students. So we'll just have to see how this plays out in the coming days, Matt.
So it looks like the debate over here is the exclusion of Islamic schools. And a lot of people don't want to dig too much into it here because they might not like the results. But no Muslim schools were approved for the program. And you just heard, who is that, the comptroller? I don't even know what that guy does. But apparently for this scenario, the comptroller is one of the guys that decides whether or not your school is eligible. And one of the criteria that he's laid out is school vouchers, meaning taxpayer dollars for education, are not going to go to any organization that has ties to terrorism. And so I don't know the detail in this, but I would be interested. Did he really find ties to terrorism in every Muslim school that applied? Because now we have a different discussion to have altogether, right? Is there such thing as a Muslim school in Texas that doesn't have a tie to terror? Or the ones that don't have a tie to terror, they just didn't apply for the voucher program? Now, both of those seem like it could be believable. I don't know. Maybe it's just like 6 schools applied. So the fact that no one's really digging into this, or I haven't seen the dig in yet, should raise your suspicions. Now, a lot of people are going to bat, saying this is not fair. We shouldn't allow discrimination against them based on their religion. But if it's not based on their religion, if it's based on the fact that they're allied and supporting terrorist groups, well, what's your comeback to that? Because the question isn't should Texas school vouchers be allowed to go to Muslim schools. The question really is, should it be allowed to go to groups that support terrorism? That's a much different conversation, isn't it? Now, it may have the same overlapping Venn diagram when we talk about schools that get excluded, but that opens up a fantastic can of worms here. Because last week you just saw 9 of your neighbors here in North Texas be found guilty on terrorism charges, and they're all in an Antifa cell. One of them's trans, has the colored hair, they fly the flag. Can we still teach that in schools? Can school vouchers still go to schools that teach that? Because it's now official. Antifa is a terrorist organization. They have committed multiple terror attacks, and this isn't reportedly, allegedly, they haven't been charged with terrorism. And no, the gavel is swung. It hit the little block of wood. They're guilty. It's a terrorist organization. So I make the case that not only should no money be going to any Muslim school that allies itself with terrorism, no money should go to any school that teaches anything positive about Antifa. If they have any of their little flags flying around, if they have any of that ideology in a poster on the wall, if the teacher has that in their bio that they support Antifa, you can see it in some of your teachers' bios right now. There was one, this lady came under fire in Fort Worth for some crazy stuff that she was liking on Facebook. Like, yay, look at the terror attacks. Isn't this great? No money should go to any Muslim school that's allied or linked to a terrorist organization, terrorist funding organization. But if that's the case, then we have to do the same thing about Antifa. And really, it could be Black Lives Matter. We've had many terror attacks committed by Black Lives Matter. Not just the random rioting where they're throwing bricks through windows and beating up people in the streets and looting a Foot Locker. But remember, they murdered 6 of our cops here in downtown Dallas. How many terror attacks does an organization have to commit before it's a terrorist organization? And if we're not allowing public funds to go to entities that support terrorism, wouldn't we necessarily have to cut out most of Islam, most of Antifa, any BLM mentions in our schools? Why are we allowing that? See, it got a little different on you there, didn't it? 800-288-9227, 800-288-9227. Coming up next, though, you're going to hear some people on Team Blue just going to bat for Muslim extremists on this issue. I'm James Parker. It's News Talk 820, 93.3 FM, WBAP. No, Texas school vouchers should not go to Muslim schools that have ties to terrorism. If that's all Muslim schools, that's another conversation we need to have. There's not a Muslim school that's not attached to either the Muslim Brotherhood or CARE. I'm James Parker, News Talk 820, 93.3 FM WBAP. You're home for Mark Lee, Van Camp, and Robbins. Three funny guys that are going to come up with a bunch of stories that you're not hearing from the mainstream media. But on this one, it's here in Texas, our lame little weak sauce school choice program just got extended for 2 more weeks based on a lawsuit from some Muslim schools because they noticed, hey, none of us qualified to receive vouchers. That's racial discrimination, or that's religious discrimination. And the answer for that was from the Texas government saying, well, we are not allowing school vouchers to go to any schools that have ties to terrorism. It's not a Muslim thing. It's not an anti-Christian thing. In fact, the comptroller was asked straight up, is there a rule that says non-Christian schools can't get vouchers? And he said, nope. So, yeah, I'm sure a bunch of secular schools, a bunch of non-Christian schools, maybe there's some Hindu schools out there. But really, there's only one religion above all others that's committing terror attacks at the level of Islam. None. And it's crazy to see how people run out and defend it. The same people who are freaking out about the 10 Commandments being in your classroom. Whoa, we can't tolerate that. Separation of church and state. Are the same people going, hey, why aren't you funding the terrorist schools too? That's discrimination. So we need to have a couple of exercises. Number one, in your head, imagine if there was a Nazi school. Would anybody want funds going to that? Public funds? On the right or left, team red or team blue, wouldn't we all kind of agree that, no, we shouldn't be funding the Nazi school? It's not good for our society. So once you admit that some ideologies are off the table and should not be receiving school vouchers, now we're just seeing where you set the boundary. Apparently, it's okay for some people. They have no problem looking the other way when it comes to Islamic terrorism. They will go root out any hint of Christianity in the public sphere. But you saw this. In fact, you just saw this last week. Abby Phillips on CNN still defending Muslims after the terror attacks. This was heard just a couple days ago.
I can't speak for Mike Johnson, but I would say we've had 2 terrorist attacks here in the last 10 days.
What does that have to do with Muslims?
So can we condemn those? Why are we?
Of course. What does that have to do with Muslims?
What does that have to do with Muslims?
There is a radical strain of Islam that's led to these terrorist attacks. Obviously, the vast majority of Muslims are
people
peaceful.
with terroristic ideologies here and all around the world. What does that have to do with whether Muslims belong in American society as a group?
Yeah, she said there's been Muslim terrorist attacks. She's like, and well, that's kind of a bad thing. That's something we should maybe try and, minimize in the future. So yeah, they will run out and they will call you terrorist. Remember Jasmine Crockett, MAGA's domestic terrorist?
Springfield is going through hell, but they're going through hell because the guy that says that he wants to be the commander-in-chief is actually bringing that hell to their footsteps. He decided to amplify a lie on a national debate stage, and that is harming American citizens. That is a problem. When I talk about MAGA, I talk about the fact that when we swore in finally in January, that we swore to defend against those that are coming against us, whether they are domestic or international. And right now, I feel like MAGA in general, they are threats to us domestically. And we see it time and time again. Listen, the problem isn't the people coming in. The problem is this guy and his people here that are doing the bomb threats throughout our country. Domestic terrorism is a real thing, and he is the guy that stokes it.
Yeah, well, was it MAGA that shot up the Michigan synagogue? Well, drove his car through the door and tried to shoot little Jewish children while they were at daycare? Was it MAGA or was it a Muslim that shot up Old Dominion University and murdered some people in front of your face? Was it MAGA or a Muslim terrorism that went down Austin on 6th Street and committed a mass murder against your fellow Texans? Was it MAGA or was it Muslims that threw the 2 IEDs at Jake Lang in New York City outside the mayor's mansion there? And I'm not just saying it's all Muslims. I mean, there was the trans mass murder at the hockey arena in Rhode Island, the trans school shooter after he killed his family in Tumbler Ridge, Canada. the guy that shot Charlie Kirk and killed him in front of all of our faces. All of this is on your side. None of it's MAGA. Where is the MAGA terror attack? Name a MAGA terror attack. So hell no, school vouchers shouldn't be going to these ideologies. I don't even think they should be going to anything that teaches left. I mean, look at all how many violent terror attacks does Antifa have to do before we recognize them as a terrorist organization as well? And they should get the same treatment that the Muslim schools are getting right now when it comes to school vouchers. Now, ultimately speaking, I wish we didn't have public schools. We wouldn't be messing with these school vouchers, and we wouldn't have to have these conversations. But since we are, can we at least not steer them into the hands of terrorists, whether it be Muslims or Antifa or BLM? This is Jeff in Itasca. You're on News Talk 820 93.3 FM WBAP. Hey, Jeff.
Hey, James. So I wanted to call in regarding this from just a little bit of a different perspective and look at this. So I'm a father of four and a Christian, and we homeschooled our four children, and we taught them Judeo-Christian values and our beliefs as Christians. But what Greg Abbott's done and the legislators have done, they've set themselves up for this legal battle in court. From the very beginning, they came up with the voucher idea. The voucher idea in itself is a disaster. Number one is, I agree with what you just said a while ago, we should not have public schools, period. Public schools education ought to be privatized 100% across the board. But because we have a public system that's funded by taxpayer money and Muslim parents pay into a publicly taxed system, our Constitution and all protects them and gives them rights to participate based on the fact they're paying into a system that they're being excluded from. Now, I will say on record, I don't want any funds going to a terrorist organization. That's not even a question. But the system itself was set up on a very bad idea from the very beginning.
Well, I think we could get around that, Jeff, if there was a Muslim school that was approved for vouchers because they didn't have ties to either CARE or the Muslim Brotherhood, which I know CARE hasn't been designated a terrorist organization by the federal government, but it has by the Texas state government. So if we had a Muslim school that was allowed to get funding, then that would sort of disprove this isn't a ban on all Muslim schools. This is just for not supporting terrorism, which kind of seems reasonable. However, now we have to have the conversation. Do all the schools really have some sort of connection to CARE or the Muslim Brotherhood, or is that just the excuse we're using for religious discrimination?
Well, they should give those parents that they're going to exclude, they ought to give them an exemption from paying public taxes if their children can't benefit from the same system that everybody else is.
Or how about this? You can still participate in the school voucher system regardless of your religion. Just don't support terrorism. Just don't send it to an organization with ties to terrorism.
Oh, I understand.
Yeah.
What you're saying.
Yeah, and there's no easy answer to this because you're right. We've muddied the water with making anything public to begin with. So, yeah, great point. That's Jeff in Itasca nailing it. Coming up next on the James Show, we're going to talk to Blaine Holt. He's a combat vet, now activist, who's going to give you an update on the situation with Iran. I'm James Parker. It's News Talk 820 93.3 FM WBAP. Well, we killed some more Iranian leaders. How many they got left? I'm James Parker. News Talk 820 93.3 FM WBAP. My next guest is going to have some insights on that. He's a retired brigadier general out of the Air Force. Blaine Holt's coming back on the James Show. And where did I see you talking about this last night? Where were you on Newsmax? Is that where you were? All right. Well, Blaine, I have no veteran experience. My geopolitics is just whatever comes through my phone on social media. Explain to me who these new leaders were that just got vaporized and why it's important that they did get vaporized. Yeah, you know what? I'm surprised I haven't heard of that more. I've heard of the Quds Force and the Iranian Revolutionary Guard, but I only have seen the reporting on the Besiege. I'm not really familiar with that group. Right. Well, how come that this hasn't happened already? It seems like we blow up somebody, the next guy in line just steps in. You know, how long can this carousel last? So I glean from that obscure John Jay reference that Blaine Holt has read the Federalist Papers at some point. Yeah. It's funny how his status among the founding fathers gets promoted by anyone who's read the Federalist Papers. We'll continue with Blaine Holt. You got another segment in you? I want to ask about specifically the strikes last night. All right, so retired Brigadier General Blaine Holt from Restore Liberties continuing next with us on the James Show. News Talk 820 93.3 FM WBAP. The bombings in Iran will continue until morale improves, I think is our plan. It's not a bad one. I'm James Parker, News Talk 820, 93.3 FM WBAP. We're continuing with retired Brigadier General from the Air Force, Blaine Holtz, now with Restore Liberty. So, Blaine, you were talking about some strikes that we did on the coast of Iran yesterday. Tell me about those. Was this aimed at clearing up the Straits of Hormuz? Oh. That is so dumb. I'm sorry. So what were we blasting last night? Well, tell me about these little bomb boats. What are these unmanned boats? Like, how big are they? Is it like the size of a bass tracker, a pontoon, or what? So how many boats have been sank trying to go through the Straits of Hormuz by Iran? When was the last time it happened? Ooh, we had one sank as recently as 3 days ago. Do we know? Do we know what took it down? What was it? A bash tracker or was it a missile? What's the? I haven't heard about any mine strikes. I've heard about mine laying crafts and they're trying to mine the waters, but I haven't actually. So let's talk about Karg Island. This is something new in the public consciousness in America. I mean, I've heard of it before, but I don't think I knew that 96% of Iran's exports came through that one little port there. So we haven't blown it up yet, and I understand why. It is still the main lifeline for revenue for the Iranian government, but there's going to be a lot of people ticked at us if we blow that up. So talk about that little delicate balance we're playing. You're right, because now they're starving. Right? Right. Yeah. So they get the nitrogen out of the air, potash for the sulfur. We got you. So, Blaine, are there any Ayatollahs left? All right, good news. Tell them how they can find you at Restore Liberty. All right, thank you very much, retired Brigadier General Blaine Holt on the James Show. Appreciate it, sir. Now I got to look up Zerient, Zerient.com. All right, coming up next on the James Show, we have some more updates from the news outside of Texas. Coming into Texas, your travel's being slowed down by the government shutdown. We'll talk about that on the James Show. News Talk 820 93.3 FM, WBAP. Well, the airports may be running a little slow for a minute. I'm James Parker. It's News Talk 820, 93.3 FM, WBAP. Welcome to the big show. This report comes from WFAA, where the shutdown is actually having some negative repercussions here in North Texas.
All right, we want to take a live look at DFW Airport and Dallas Love Field this morning. Those airports dealing with normal spring break travel, where security screening wait times on Tuesday range between a little over 30 minutes to as short as 2 minutes. That's not the case at other airports, though, where the TSA worker shortage is hitting harder because of the partial government shutdown. More TSA officers continue to call out sick because they haven't been, they've been working without full pay since it lapsed on February 14th due to that shutdown. The most impacted airports: New Orleans, Atlanta, Houston, Hobby, and New York. Philadelphia's airport forced to close checkpoints because low staff, and some smaller airports may close if some workers call out there too. Lawmakers are at odds over funding the Homeland Security Department right now, and that's what's the hangup.
On one hand, I don't feel sorry for them because they're government workers, and this is what happens when you get government jobs. You're subjected to random shutdowns. And there's funky things that happen in the private sector that government workers don't have to worry about, like layoffs and your company going bankrupt. The government's not going to go bankrupt, and TSA's not going to shut down on its own. So there's always trade-offs there. What I think we all agree on, it's kind of unfortunate that these people are used as political pawns on a semi-regular basis by the people in D.C. There's one way to get out of it, though, and I wish they would include this in every single WFAA or Dallas Morning News or even Fox News and CNN in every report. If you don't want this to happen anymore in the future, the solution is so simple. Just privatize the TSA. Well, James, we can't do that. Well, that's what it was until 9/11. We didn't have the TSA. In fact, each airport took care of its own security. Each airline was responsible for its own security. TSA has a record of abject, absolute failure. By the way, do you realize if TSA had a baseball card, what the stats would be on the back of that baseball card? Here's how many terror attacks have been prevented by the TSA. None. In fact, the few times we've had an attempted terror attack since 9/11 on an airplane, they got through TSA, the shoe bomber, the fruit of the boomer. Remember the guy that had the underwear bomb? Which is the worst place to put a bomb? Let's put it in your undercarriage? Jesus. How dedicated to the cause do you have to be? But they have confiscated thousands of guns every year from otherwise law-abiding Americans. Shall not be infringed. They infringe the hell out of it. In fact, there's been no more successful gun confiscation program in American history but the TSA. So yeah, privatize it. Remember, I know your memory is, all of our attention spans have gone smaller, but remember back 3 months ago? Remember when the shutdown was a huge deal? There was the food stamp crash out and the air traffic controllers. Privatize all that. Privatize the air traffic controllers while we're at it. James, we can't do that. Why not? Canada did it. Britain did it. Margaret Thatcher did it for Britain in the 80s. We can do it now. So you can, at the same time, feel sorry for these people for being used as a political football, but also understand that, well, as long as it's in the hands of government, they're going to be a political football. And if y'all aren't talking about the real solution on saving your neighbors the grief of having to miss a paycheck every time there's a squabble in D.C., then you need to include the solution. Because if you're not including the solution, if you're not trying to get them off the playing field where they're being kicked around, then you're not actually concerned about these people being exploited for a political purpose. You're actually participating in the exploitation because you just want your side to win. Oh, we've got to turn the government back on. Look at these suffering people. Well, if you're concerned about the suffering people, you would institute the policy that would prevent their future suffering as well. So if you're not taking the position that the TSA and air traffic controllers and all these people that are experiencing some sort of turmoil because of the shutdown, if you're not advocating for them to be released from the yoke of government servitude, then you are participating in their exploitation. 800-288-9227, 800-288-9227. Granted, if you were here an hour ago at the beginning of the show, I was talking about one of the other big stories here in Texas, and that's the school choice, the voucher application deadline being extended for a couple of weeks, because now there's a fuss because no Muslim school got approved, but the comptroller said, well, all the Muslim schools had ties to terrorism, and so now we have to have this fight. Should school vouchers, should public money be going to terrorist-linked endeavors or religious-linked endeavors, or is this discrimination? We wouldn't even have to have this argument if we would just get rid of the public school mess. And you know how nice that would be? Like the 10 Commandments argument would go away. The dirty books in the library issue would go away. Because look, some parents could send their kids to the schools that pretend like the Bible and God doesn't exist, but they do get all the gay books in the library. The other people can send their kids to schools that have the 10 Commandments on the wall, and they can include biblical references in their history. Other people can send their kids to the Muslim school or a terrorist school or whatever school you want. It could be completely secular. It could be an Amish school. But it's only because we have put this very important task in the hands of government that we have this new problem we're dealing with today. And the solution is privatize it. And it's not me being just some wild-eyed free market capitalist pig who just read Atlas Shrugged for the first time. This is what the Founding Fathers set up. What I'm describing is what the Founding Fathers left for us. And we screwed it up when we decided that we knew better than they did, and government really should be in all these other areas. We made the mistake. The Founding Fathers were right. Undo that. And if you're not willing to say that, then I don't want to hear you're fussing about a TSA worker temporarily missing a check. 800-288-9227. Coming up next, I'm going to blow this tax the rich movement out of the water. Actually, I'm going to let Stephen A. Smith blow this tax the rich movement out of the water because it sounds more compelling coming from a guy who's a professed Democrat who's thinking about running for president as a Democrat, who actually has his head screwed on straight when it comes to anything economic. I find that amazing. You'll hear it next on The James Show. News Talk 820, 93.3 FM, WBAP. So let's talk about this tax the rich movement. I'm James Parker. It's News Talk 820, 93.3 FM, WBAP. And I call it a movement because this is happening in multiple places at the same time across our society. I mean, it happens in other countries as well. But right now, you have Washington State, who is one of the few states left that doesn't have an income tax, and they just passed an income tax, but it's only for millionaires and billionaires. And dude, one of the reasons you guys had such a strong corporate headquarter scene going is because you were a no income tax state. You know, it's not just a coincidence of all the companies that are up there. I mean, in Microsoft up there, and Amazon was up there, and Starbucks is up there, and Boeing's up there. What, are you going to run them all off? What, do you think they're just going to sit around and take it in the chin? Because it's a pretty big tax. It went in like a 9% tax. And then over in New York City, well, really New York State, but it's driven by New York City. New York City! There's a proposal to raise the taxes on the top income earners that actually lost in the state house. And so now Mom Donnie and a bunch of other, I guess, celebrities and goobers are pushing to, look, if we can't get this done at the state level, we're going to have to do this at the city level, because we're just going to have to, some people who can afford it are going to have to pay more so all of us can afford New York. And it's so dumb. But here, let me give you an example. Mark Ruffalo, the Hulk, he seems like a nice guy who's not coming at this out of a place of hate or anger. Like he seems genuine, like a guy who really thinks he's got the policies to make the world a better place. He's just misled. He's not like one of the hateful ones, like a Sonny Hostin or a Rosie O'Donnell, I don't think he hates this country. He just has absolute brain dead economic ideology.
That we should tax billionaires and corporations to fund childcare, housing, and transit. Working people shouldn't be the ones always stuck with the bill. This Wednesday, February 25th, thousands of folks are going to Albany to send Kathy Hochul one clear message. Tax the rich for a New York that we can all afford. They can handle it. Trust me.
How does taxing the rich make anything more affordable for middle-class people? Now, how does taxing the rich help you at all? The theory is well, they're going to use that money to make programs, so you'll have free daycare or you'll have free whatever. I don't qualify for free damn anything around here. So you going and stealing money from my neighbor just because he happens to be a little bit more successful than me doesn't improve my life one bit. Now, it does make some people who are already incapable of providing for themselves even more indentured to the state. But make no mistake, all the problems in your life, none of them were caused by someone else having too much money. This really just feels like the politics of envy. And I'm not just saying that because it's ugly. I'm saying it because it has terrible results. Taxing the rich, this is money that they could have used to open a new business or fund someone else's venture or hire a new person or open a new branch or be an angel investor in someone else's company. This money is better spent by the people who earned it than sending it to what, DC, or sending it to Albany. They're going to do something smarter with it. They're not going to waste it. They're not going to spend it on a global warming coloring book in Belarus or something stupid like that. But let me give you a good pushback here. On the David Rubin show, Stephen A. Smith, now, he's known as a sportscaster, but he talks about politics some, and he's even entertained quite a few questions about running for president as a Democrat, which he said he doesn't plan on doing, but he's not completely divorced from the idea. I like his take on it because this isn't coming from me, who's already a free market capitalist pig and someone on Team Red and probably going to not like anything Mark Ruffalo says anyway. This is great to hear because this is coming from what's left of the reasonable people on the Team Blue side.
I moved down to Florida about a year and a half ago, and it's the best move that I've made in quite a long time in my life. I am in heaven. The weather, I moved down here for two reasons: weather and no state income taxes. And I was unapologetic for it. You know, I still have to, go back and forth between New York and LA because of obligations, but make no mistake about it, I'm very, very happy here in Florida. I believe that it's been a great state. It's been very, very, very good to me. I almost want to sound like Sammy. So very, very good to me. I mean, I'm loving it, so it doesn't bother me at all. But when you hear stuff like that, it's like, listen, people are entitled to their own passions. And there is this innate belief almost that the rich are getting away hand over foot because of loopholes that have never been closed and stuff like that. I get that part. But in the end, you know what? As a nation, we're over $38 trillion in debt. Somewhere along the way, clearly there's been mismanagement. And when you're constantly going to the American people and you're singing the same old song and dance every 4 years, we're not buying it anymore. Tax the rich, tax the rich, tax the rich. Somewhere along the way, would you mind handling the budget?
Exactly.
Would you mind doing your job? The fact is that hasn't been done. And it's real easy to point the finger. These folks that are rich, they manage a budget. They manage a payroll. You understand? They hire folks, etc. They know a thing or two about curbing spending. They know a thing or two about handling a budget. And so, and you look at it from that standpoint and you say, wow, you're blaming them when in fact it's really, really you. Because you can't do what they do every day. Maybe you should go to them to get some lessons.
Yes, that's how I feel. Because you think about it, he's making such a great point. You're taking money from the people who actually know how to balance the budget, to people who know how to cut spending and make a profit and have money left over at the end of the day. And you're giving it to people who've run up a $38 trillion debt. That is dumb. That is terrible stewardship of our scarce resources. But he's absolutely right. And when you look at the numbers from Minnesota, we think 10 billion has already been uncovered. The estimates are it could be as high as 20 billion. Let's just use. If you look at it on sort of a proportional basis, Texas is about 5 times as big as Minnesota. If we have about 5 times the fraud going on here, that's 50 billion, and that's just from a handful of programs right there. That's not counting Medicare, all the Medicare, Medicaid, Social Security, all the other frauds. Just some of these programs here. You realize we have hundreds of billions of dollars in fraud that's happening right under our noses. Does any corporation tolerate that, or do they have a better record of rooting that stuff out? And if they didn't, wouldn't they go out of business? Wouldn't there be negative consequences to it? So yeah, this whole eat the rich, this whole tax the rich movement, it's just ugly, naked envy. It's one of the 7 deadly sins. And if you want to base your fiscal policy on that, you are not going to like the results. We already tried that. We tried that in the Soviet Union. We tried that in Venezuela. We tried that in Cuba. Cuba doesn't even have the lights on right now. And if you really wanted to be equal, if you really wanted to be air quotes fair, you got to pay your fair share. You know what a fair share is? If everybody pays an equal amount. So I think there should just be a head tax. What does it cost to run the government? Divide that by 330 million people. That's everybody's bill. If you're like, well, that's not fair because poor people don't have the ability to pay the rich people do, then fine. Make it a static percentage. Tell me what the percentage is. Is it 10%? Is it 20%? Is it 60%? Because it sure as hell can't be fair if someone's paying more than 50% of their income in taxes. There's no way anybody can convince me that's fair. 800-288-9227. 800-288-9227. Coming up next, speaking of fraud, speaking of waste and abuse, Nick Shirley has run his fraud busting operations out in California. He was on Hannity last night. You'll hear it next on News Talk 820, 93.3 FM, WBAP. Nick Shirley uncovers more fraud. I'm James Parker, News Talk 820, 93.3 FM, WBAP. If that name sounds familiar, Nick Shirley's the guy that released the videos from Minnesota on the day after Christmas, and we were all introduced to what's now a great laughingstock, the Leering Center. Remember? It's the same guy. Now, if he can go to a state that's only 5.5 million people, like the entire state of Minnesota has less population than the DFW Metroplex. You understand that? So what happens when you go to a big state? What happens if you go to the biggest state? So he goes over to California, does the same sort of tact where he just looks up some stuff that seems kind of suspicious, goes and checks it out, and gets it all on video. And it's obvious. Fraud is happening all around you to the tune of hundreds of billions, if not over $1 trillion. We could probably balance the budget if only we would get rid of the waste, fraud, and abuse, which means the fact that we have inflation every year, comes from printing the money that we don't tax versus what we spend. So we have to add to the money supply by printing money or digitizing money, monetizing the debt. So that's where your inflation comes from. If we solve this problem, if we actually took the Nick Shirley breadcrumbs and followed them all the way down the trail, you wouldn't have inflation. You wouldn't have gotten a 25% pay cut over the last 5 years. That's what inflation has done. We have all lost 25% of our purchasing power since 2021 because of inflation when you add it all up. It's still continuing to burn hotter than it should. And ignoring this is giving you a pay cut every year. Every year you ignore this. Every year that you don't put your foot down and demand the budget be balanced, you're giving yourself a pay cut. So I understand all the culture war stuff is important, what's in the books at your kids' schools or, men and women's sports or abortion or racism. These are all, I'm not saying they're not important issues, but this is the one that affects you the most. So here he is last night on the Sean Hannity show, Nick Shirley, talking about his latest investigation that he just released in California.
Yeah, well, California is a lot bigger state than Minnesota, obviously, and they receive more money, and they also tax their people more than any other state in America, yet they allow more fraud to take place than any other state in America as well.
All right, let's talk a little bit about what exactly, explain where you went, what you were looking for, what you found, and then we'll get to Gavin's response.
Yeah, so obviously their daycare system as well, there's just tons of fraud. These daycares have multiple violations, yet they continue to receive money through a program called CalWorks. And then let's talk about the hospice fraud, where you have 1,000% increase in hospices inside of just the LA area alone. $1 in $10 for home health care in America goes to the LA area. These fraudsters are driving around not just $100,000 cars, but literally $200,000 Maybachs. And they're just defrauding the American taxpayer like no other place I've ever seen. And they have no remorse for it. They drive around all these nice cars, wear designer clothing, you name it. And they're inside of these old motel looking like businesses, defrauding the taxpayer of quite literally millions and billions of dollars.
All right, hang on, Nick. Do we need to go to California and open a daycare? Because this seems, I'm only half joking. What are we doing here? I mean, look at me right now. I'm in the middle of my first shift of the day. I'm going to come back and work another shift today. I'm working doubles. You and I, what are we putting in? 60 hours a week over here? Barely getting ahead. I'm drowning in debt. I got credit cards to pay off. I got kids' medical bills to pay off. I have dentist bills to pay off. Drive a 10-year-old dented car. I'm not in a Maybach. I'm in a Toyota. What do we do? We're chumps, man. Working for a living so they can come take about 30, 40% of our income and give it to these people with just no oversight. Just hand it over. Here's a bag of money. Take it. What are we doing? This makes it feel like we're just really getting screwed over here. Not only are we getting a pay cut to fund this, I mean, we shouldn't even have to be working in the first place if we did what they did.
Now, Newsom's office tried to mock you. They posted a photo of a man carrying several cameras at a daycare center. And you're investigating whether or not there's fraud in daycare centers and hospice. And then they said asking a teacher, hey, can I see your kids? You did not hold back in your response. I'll let you paraphrase your response. What did you say to Gavin?
Yeah, I don't know why they're trying to make me and paint me out to look like a legit pedophile. That's what they're trying to do. And what they're trying to do is then create a small group of their base to then hate Nick Shirley, which then justifies them to go and attack Nick Shirley and do something to Nick Shirley. When in reality, I'm working for both Republicans and Democrats, just exposing the fraud. I'm working on behalf of all American taxpayers because I'm sick of seeing this fraud in every single location that I go to.
Isn't this crazy how wanting to expose and root out taxpayer abuse is now a partisan issue? You would think, who the hell's against this? And I don't care if you're on Team Red or Team Blue. If someone's going through your state and pointing out where taxpayer dollars are being wasted, you don't make fun of the guy. You thank him. Hey, I appreciate that. In fact, all the taxpayers of America and I guess California should be thanking Nick Shirley. But no, he's a bad guy. Let's mock him. Let's make a meme about him and imply that he's a pedophile. Really? You think you're the good guys? You think you're the good guys when someone is trying to expose fraud and you're making fun of them? You're not either, because he could come back and say, well, here's why Nick Shirley's wrong, and he didn't. Or you could say, okay, well, thanks for exposing this. We're going to shut this down immediately. They haven't done either one. I think that's the crazier part. That's the crazier part. We're showing you fraud, and now Nick Shirley's a bad guy. And if it is a partisan issue, which one's the good guys and the bad guys? The ones that are trying to expose fraud and save taxpayer dollars from being wasted, or the people that are facilitating it, allowing it to happen, then turning a blind eye when it's exposed to them, and then mocking the people who exposed it? Who's the good guy in that one? 800-288-9227. 800-288-9227. We have another update coming up on the scam to relocate City Hall. I'm telling you, there's already a deal done. They're just not telling you. I'm James Parker. It's News Talk 820, 93.3 FM, WBAP. I smell a scam in Dallas City Hall. This whole City Hall demolition act is just that. It's an act. There are some players behind the scenes who have already made a deal, and they know what they want to do. They just can't come out and tell you. They can't come out and tell you that, well, a bunch of developers wanted to get billions of dollars worth of contracts to build the new stadium. And they didn't want to have to pay someone for the land, so we're going to demolish City Hall. Since we already own this land, we can just hand it over to the Mavericks without having to eminent domain and spend millions of dollars compensating the people who actually own the land where we're going to build it. No, we can just give them a freebie here. And then the people who are going to build this stadium, the people who actually pour the concrete, dig the hole, stack the bricks, hook up the electricity and the plumbing, those people are going to get hundreds of millions of dollars worth of contracts, and you'll get to decide where it goes. And there's a lot of money to be made here. So let's just come up with this goofy plan to sell it to the people of Dallas. They'll buy anything. The media is going to be on your side. No one's really going to look into it with a skeptical, critical view. So we'll just say that City Hall all of a sudden out of nowhere needs $1 billion worth of repairs. It'll cost $1 billion if we want to stay here. And then jeepers, the people will say, well, I don't want to spend that. We better just tear it down. Now, none of it makes sense for 5 seconds. But you see, even though we haven't even approved the plan, they've looked at multiple sites here for relocating City Hall. Here's the latest one, just another visit to another building.
Dallas leaders are considering the Epic in Deep Ellum as a replacement for City Hall. Our partners at the Dallas Business Journal report that city leaders have toured the location near I-45 and Gaston Avenue a few times. This is one of more than a dozen sites under consideration.
They've toured it a few times. There's a dozen sites under consideration. We haven't even agreed to tear the damn thing down. And it's, oh man, this is so frustrating because it is naked corruption happening in front of your face. And you got a bunch of people pretending like this is real. Like, oh, I love the emperor's clothes. No, the emperor has no clothes. Oh, no, you just can't see it because you're stupid. Oh, really? You're not the stupid one? Does anybody really think we need to tear down City Hall that's only 47 years old? Does anybody think they really built the building so shoddy it's going to crumble after 48 years? Do you realize the previous City Hall building before the current one was built and opened in 1914? It's still standing. It's still in use. Did we become worse at building buildings in the 60 years between City Hall 4 and City Hall 5? Or did we get better? Did we have better materials, better technology, better tools? None of this makes sense. Even if the building was in terrible condition, why would you tear it down? Why would you not sell off the asset and at least recoup some of the money? It's already paid off. Where are we getting the money for this? And I'm not talking about repairing City Hall. I'm talking about moving and having to, what? We going to rent space in the Epic? They were looking at the Bryan Tower last week. Bryan Tower, by the way, older than City Hall. Hilarious. This is all corrupt. This is all an excuse. So a bunch of connected people can make a whole bunch of money off of you, and they are banking on your apathy on this situation. And if you let it happen, that's on you. 800-288-9227. Oh, well, I guess we're about out of time here. Stick around. Coming up next, Markley, Van Camp, and Robbins is going to take over for the next 3 hours.